I got from my friends. And I'm like, no. See, that's my friend.
One said, I think that's either whatever. All right. everywhere. Even if you got a
think you
rag,
know
and
everything.
you know, it's still,
Yeah, but-
you touch the rag and get it on you, and then you wipe it off. I still got it on my my nails.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. But yeah.
Useless as a 3-2. Useless. Oh wait, you do landscaping? Listen, I have you come to my backyard. I need somewhere to dump pea gravel. It's a little like, you know, it's a little like Dixon, a little person about this building. What's wrong? Dylan's trying to kill all of us, I'm hearing.
Looked like a big gash there. I looked at it. What'd you do to your arm? No, I just saw that. No, not the stem wasn't there. Just the
Yeah.
the thing. Like, yeah, nothing.
I guess they didn't like grams, and they brought in a whole truckload and put them.
Councilmember Carter, can you hear us again and see us?
Yes, could you remind the council to speak into the mic and speak a little louder? It's very difficult to hear what they have to say.
Can all of council hear what he just said and not talk? Okay, they're not listening.
When they're not in chamber, I can hear them, but I caught about a third of what um, council had to say.
We need to speak up.
Yes.
I hear you, Larry Carter.
Everyone swallow the mic to speak into it, basically.
Thank you,
Can we
ma'am.
get some candy?
No, because then you might actually eat it.
Chocolate frosting?
Have the mayor take care of you.
Hey, so in July.
The other one's local too, but can't get away between.
We'll just like upstairs.
I'm better than that. It's like get lost.
Yeah.
I didn't like him.
No
Even
pictures,
if
right.
she was straight, I wouldn't have wanted. We need to get started on the there. What's a little top plan? We're gonna be there all night long.
It's 5.
Who's doing the presentation on this? You are? Tyler, you gonna do the presentation on this?
Is this the?
It was 3 hours long? With a nap? Okay. Everybody ready on the left? Right? City manager, city clerk, legal? Okay, well, in that case. All right. I am calling to order the public workshop of the City of Mary Esther City Council, April 7th, 2025 at 5:30 p.m. Would everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thank you. Now I would like the city clerk to do a roll call of the council.
Mayor Pro Tem Sutton,
Here.
Councilmember Coxwell,
Here.
Councilmember Lawson,
Present.
Councilmember Oder.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Now I'd like to have a motion to,
You don't need one for Carter.
The workshop, Mayor, you don't have to.
so we're not going to do any voting. Okay, Mr. Carter, did you hear that?
Yes, my feelings are hurt.
Well,
You know, stick around. We just
I
don't-
think the next meeting we'll have to have you back on the hot seat there. So,
Not a
all right,
problem.
well.
I feel
in
the
that
love.
case- Yep, well, introductions. Okay, introductions.
Good evening, council. For the record, Tyler Reed, City Community Development Director. It's been a long day. The City of Mary Esther, in collaboration with the Emerald Coast Regional Council, ECRC, is undertaking an update to its comprehensive plan, a foundational document that guides the city's long-term growth, development, and policy decisions. Eric Christensen of ECRC will present the proposed updates, which encompasses significant changes aimed at ensuring the plan remains relevant and aligned with state requirements and the community's vision. This is the second public workshop. The first public workshop took place on December 11th, 2024. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce Eric Christensen to continue with the presentation.
Thank you.
There we go. Yeah, we'll see. I may not get any then. All right, thank you so much. It's good to see you all again. Am I good on the mic here?
Please
Do I need
state
to-
your name and address.
Eric Christensen, Emerald Coast Regional Council, 2875 Bayview Way, Pensacola, Florida.
Oh,
So yeah, today with you all, thank you, Mayor, members of the council for having me here. I'm going to kind of give a quick recap of what the comp plan is, why we're doing this. I know you all saw this just in December, but we do have at least one extra person here. Then we're going to go over all the policy changes, at least all the major ones that we put in there. I will warn you, I have 52 slides here, and I know we not want to do this in less than an hour. So I am going to move pretty quickly. But I want you all to stop me whenever there's something that you feel like you want to discuss, because these are changes that we've already put in there. They are based on the conversations that we've had at the last public forum. But there may be some things where you have questions or you want clarification, or maybe want us to take another look at it before we finalize it. Then we'll talk a little bit about the implementation steps and adoption. So your comp plan is kind of I would say, the most important policy document that a city has, but it's your long-term blueprint for guiding future growth and development. By itself, your comp plan doesn't regulate anything, but what your comp plan does is it's a really strong signal to your staff, to property owners, and even to yourselves and the future folks who will sit in your seats that this is the kind of city that Mary Esther wants to be. And when you are evaluating things like that fence that you had earlier that you were talking about for the conditional use permit, you're talking about future laws, you're talking about rezonings. The number one thing that staff is going to look for, that you should look for, is what does your comprehensive plan say? So a well-written plan simplifies the task of approving development requests and ordinance changes. So once again, the comp plan is that high-level future vision. What do we want to be 20 years from now? Whereas your zoning ordinance regulates the land as it is today, and it's much more specific. So this is a repeat from December, but the four kind of required things that the state asked of you that started this process was you needed to update your planning horizon, which we've done. Now it goes out to 2045. Added in the required property rights element, which was passed by the state in 2021. And then we've changed a lot. There was some language in there that was still from the early 90s that just needed a little touch up. And then the last major update was in 2010. And the city has changed in some ways since 2010 that we wanted to reflect. The state had that deadline to February 28th, which we have gone a little bit past, which all that means is that the city, for the time being, until this is approved, you can't change your future land use map. But the state is aware, staff was in contact with them, and we'll be moving quickly into getting this passed, hopefully. So any questions on the kind of high level stuff? Here was our timeline. Last time I saw you was back in, I can see it here. Back in December. You've had a couple of months to sort of look over the draft documents based on that first conversation. Here we're going to go through them a little bit of detail to see kind of are you happy with it as it is? Anything that you still want to discuss, potentially change? If we're happy with it, we'll move into the final drafting of documents and then into adoption hearings, maybe as early as May or June. So there's a lot of changes in there. Most of them are far too boring to talk about, but I've just kind of wanted to give you a high level view here. A lot of just grammar and clarity changes throughout where there were words that, one of the things that I kept running into is whoever first drafted this used the word insure, like to give insurance, when they meant ensure, like to make sure of something. And so I kept thinking I was getting it wrong myself, but a lot of things like that. They just wanted to make sure it was clear, make sure it read well. We also restructured and simplified the document quite significantly. It was built kind of as the law told it to be built in the early 90s. The law has changed a lot since then, and so there's more flexibility. We moved some things around so it'll be a lot easier for the general public, for you all and your staff to use. Removed a lot of references to outdated land development, outdated parts of your code, outdated statutes, added in best practices where appropriate, and then created a new annual comprehensive plan review and goal setting session that we'll talk about here toward the end. The new kind of structure is there on the left. There are 10 sections, in addition to the introduction and definitions. The future land use element is the first one we're going to talk about. Probably we're going to spend most of our time just on that one. That's really the heart of the plan. The other ones really support that future land use element. But any questions on any of that before we jump right in? Okay. So the future land use element, some of the major updates there are clarified descriptions of what your future land use categories are. They were pretty bare before, and so we've pumped them up a bit. We've also created some future land use categories. And then we've also created two overlay districts, which we'll talk about here shortly, a town center overlay and a sound side overlay. We also moved concurrency management in. Previously, that was its own independent section, and we updated your future land use map in several places. So concurrency management, it's the system in Florida of kind of making sure that the required public facilities are in place by the time new development goes in. So you don't have a new development come in that you don't yet have all of your necessary services for. So that's a part of the way that planning is done. It's really kind of specifically Florida thing. We didn't change much. We just kind of moved that in to make it a little easier to find. So this is your future land use map as it is today. And with the changes that are proposed here, this is what it would look like in 2040. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail now because we'll come back to this, but you can see there is that, wrong button. There is that new historic duplex and cottage district, which is proposed for some of the parcels south of 98. Also, significantly, we have these two overlay districts. There is that town center overlay that goes down here, and then we have the sound side overlay that is down here. So this is just a little context, and we'll talk about what those mean.
Where's the sound
now.
side one? Go back.
So the
Just south of 98?
Yep, south of 98. It's the
Okay,
hashes that
I
go
see it.
this
Yeah,
way.
I just
Yeah.
wondered if that was it. Okay.
Sorry. Yep.
See your light.
So yeah, can you all see that, or is it just
That's-
looking at me?
yeah.
Okay.
Not this way,
When
you
you
can't.
point, hit the TV, it goes away. I guess.
So previously you had for all it said for your low density residential was just that 5.51 dwelling units per acre. We beefed these up quite a bit just to reflect kind of normal things that are in a comp plan to explain to staff that if somebody wants to develop in low density residential, what's allowed. I would say some of the notable things, as we mentioned right there, that typically homes are going to include accessory structures like garages, that there may be home occupations if you allow it in your LDC. And often neighborhood scale amenities like churches and daycares are typically allowed in low density residential future land use districts. It may still require a rezoning depending on your local development code, but it wouldn't necessarily require a future land use. Just these are pretty standard things that now are written out, and we did this for all of them. So there's quite a few more definitions if you take a look at it in there now to guide yourselves and staff as you evaluate future land uses. So there are two new land use categories. One of them we actually don't have on the map. It's just a high density residential. Previously, you just had one kind of medium and high together. We created a separate high density category so that you can be a little bit more precise when you're deciding, okay, we can allow medium here, but not high, or vice versa.
What would be the difference
So it's just how many units per acre.
per acre?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so
So like an
I can
apartment
pull that up.
complex?
Yeah.
The mall, that's high density?
Yep.
Okay.
And so I could pull that up here, but yeah, it's,
No, that's fine. Just curious. what-
yeah, just a little higher ceiling. So the one that is on the map is this new historic duplex cottage district. And this is one that I may have Tyler jump up at some point and talk a little bit about, but this is a proposal that actually came in a little bit later in the process. We didn't talk about this in December, but just to reflect that as he was walking these parcels, looking kind of for the sound side overlay, realized that there are some parcels that, the way they're built now wouldn't have been allowed, or wouldn't be allowed if someone wanted to do that today. And so wanted to create a category that recognizes what's there and would allow them to continue or even to rebuild in case that something were to happen to them, or even just needed to be rebuilt for kind of the age of the structure. And so it's just a little bit higher density, and recognizes that there are these single family kind of smaller homes, detached homes and duplexes at a higher density than there are on other parcels around. I don't know if you have any questions about that, or if Tyler, you wanted to.
You're talking about the ones out by the highway.
Yeah, and I can
No, I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah.
Just
Come
that's
back,
the one
it's-
where they have
yep.
a house on the water and then 4 or
Like
5
the cottages.
cottages going back. Yeah, no, that, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, the historic, sorry, for the record, Tyler Reed, Community Development Director. Yeah, when canvassing the area, I did notice, these unique duplexes and cottages that are detached, and most of them are on one parcel. And then you have several of these buildings, and then you have a principal structure usually, or a mixture of just duplexes and cottages, or just duplexes. And these structures were built in the 1950s, most of them. And so 1975 and older is considered historic. And I think it's a very unique thing to the city. And it would be, in my opinion, kind of a tragedy if we were to lose the ability to have these duplexes, like Eric was saying, in case, damage were to happen to these buildings by a hurricane or whatever, we would not be able to rebuild these with the current code. And this provides a variety of housing, and it allows people with lower income to live south of 98, have access to the sound. So I think it's something worth preserving. And that's kind of the goal of what we're trying to do here with that district.
Any discussion or questions on that district in particular?
It would not be new construction. It would be strictly rebuilding stuff that was damaged that's 75 or older, 1975 or older.
So the specifics of it, you would put in the development code. You would, when you're zoning for it, this is kind of the direction for, if you wanted to put that in, that this is only for existing and, and we don't want to necessarily allow
It's historic
rebuilding.
cottages.
Yeah.
And if I have a new piece of property and I want to put 4 duplexes on it, they're not historic and they're not, I mean, they could be cottages, but they're not
Sure.
historic. So I mean,
So the thing about future land use is it is talking about what you want to see there in the future. And so it would be, depending on how this is written, this is a sign for, let's say something does happen and someone does want to rebuild. If you want to make sure that only ones that existed prior to a certain year, that it would probably be good for us to include that. So that's a good thing to,
So essentially, these are grandfathered in properties.
currently they would be, yeah.
Okay.
And what he's saying also is, you look at the comprehensive plan, almost kind of like the Constitution, it's not going to have everything in there, and you got to fill in the body with ordinances after the fact.
Mhm.
But it'll give you kind of, hey, if our ordinance is unclear, or our comp plan is unclear, then you maybe fill that gap in with the ordinance, or if the ordinance says something that contradicts the comp plan, then the comp plan would tend to rule.
So if we designate this as a historic, does that mean they also can't tear them down?
So really what you'd be saying is just the words that are there. And so it's pretty high level. It doesn't say anything about them not being able to tear it down. I would read this as they could probably rebuild. But typically after this is passed, you would rewrite your ordinance to include a zoning district to reflect that. So this is kind of your sign to staff that, hey, this is something we want to protect. And then usually you'd amend your ordinance to really clarify kind of how it's applied.
Okay.
And that's where you could fit in, more details around that.
Thank
but,
you.
But this is the time to kind of have the high level discussion, like, do we want to allow them to continue, be rebuilt as well? Do we want to preserve them?
Right, and to kind of play off that point, if you wanted to say, hey, if you rebuild, developer comes in, buys it, says, ooh, flips, well, you can only build so many cottages, and they, square footage can only be this
So
much.
basically stick to the same format that's already there,
Right.
like
But
the
you could do
integrity of
that.
the property is already set.
Do that for performance. And then that would give you some flexibility, this council or another future council change that, but as it's saying, hey, at least in these areas with these properties, we're gonna allow this. But then your ordinance is gonna say, okay, but this is where we put the guardrails up on how to make sure we don't get too far away from.
But back to April's question though, like say the thing with Curtis, he bought a piece of property, it's got these old cottages. He's bulldozing them down. Can he do that?
Really, yeah.
He already did one and there's one more left.
Yeah.
And Hayward,
He's
if you don't
allowed-
mind, can you speak into your mic?
Yeah.
So
So
he
yeah,
can do what he's doing.
right, because we
Okay.
don't have anything like this in the comp plan. We don't have a set of rules that say, hey, if you tear down two, you got to rebuild at least one, anything like
Okay.
that.
I mean, I do like the idea of having a historic district so that to preserve those, because the cottages are Mary Esther. I mean, everybody knows. I mean, that's kind of like one of the identifying things. So I do like preserving them and not like maybe saying like if the family decides to sell the property to someone that's not in the family and they just come and bulldoze everything. It kind of takes away the little cute identity of these cottages. So I do like preserving them.
And I would say typically when you do something like that, where you kind of, because in this case, we are increasing the density from what everybody else, they could be a little, in a little tighter, is that, you kind of give them something, but you could also maybe have some restrictions with that. And that
Right.
tends to work a little better if there's something you're given, but something you're maybe requiring in exchange.
The one thing I would add too is depending on how many units are there now, you could have a lot where, let's say there's only 3 cottages on there. If the density became 10 dwelling units, they may be able to add another 7. And so that's where it really gets important to understand what the intent is of the council so that we can update those ordinances.
And there's ways that you can do that through setback requirements where you allow maybe, knowing that you say, okay, well, we don't want 10, but we could maybe max out at 8. And we'll do that through, you're allowed these setback requirements between the cottages and things like that. So again, it's, as he said, kind of high level, but those would be things that this council would need to think about. Staff could come back with recommendations, and then that would be the time to say, hey, let's put the meat on the bone at this point.
I was just going to add to one of the reasons why we chose 10 was because currently there is a property south of 98 that has 10 dwelling units.
And
Yes.
Yeah, but they're not.
They're real.
Like-
They're small. They're like 900 square feet duplexes plus the main house. Hmm.
Oh, they're actually smaller inside. They're like 450 square feet. In
Yeah.
one's on both sides.
Yeah, so it's the total of one duplex is 900 square feet. So half that, it's like 400, 450.
Yeah.
The other thing I would add to this too, this is a great plan because the state is already starting to delve into this. So the better we're prepared, we can go argue and fight with the state legislators who are deciding, oh, we're going to tell you how to cut everything up and divide everything, and we're going to decide that. No, we need to decide that here. We live here, you don't. So, but yeah, this will help.
Would this bleed over into, I mean, we do have, I mean, my neighborhood is built in the 60s. We've got, even older neighborhoods in Azalea and stuff that are more 50s. If we're talking about historic and we're talking about the years built, say you are in a 1960s home and you try to go do something, do some of those things apply because they're considered in that historic, even though we're not in the zone,
Yeah.
we're in that time frame. Does that give
So for
us
these-
same constrictions?
So we could do that somewhere else, but for this, it's really just that map.
Just,
Th-
so
these just
just
apply where
those are
that-
designated. So anybody else, say like in our neighborhood, like his and mine, we're 60, so that puts us in the bubble of this old.
Historic.
Historic,
Don't say old.
We're vintage.
Historic. Yeah,
We're
vintage.
but
Yeah.
yeah, so, okay. I mean, because you can see that becoming kind of a thing, well, this is bleeding over, into, since we do have so many homes of that.
Yeah.
Vintage.
Dilapidated. Okay, we're not going that far. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, there's a few.
So I'm gonna, just keep us moving here so we don't, so the next step is, some of the overlay districts. So in addition to that new land use district, there's 2 overlay districts created by this. This is from your vision plan. You've seen that before. What an overlay district is that when you have, and this is used more in zoning than in comp plans, but sorry, is that you'll have your underlying future land use district that could be residential, commercial, whatever, and then you'll put another one on top of it. You can sort of see it there. In this case, this was from a different plan, but I thought it was a good visual, where it was a stream corridor overlay district. There might be some special restrictions about being near the stream, but essentially applies no matter what your underlying future land use is. And so this creates two of those to just kind of put a little bit more specific kind of vision for some of these areas. The first one is the town center overlay. And this was very much inspired by what you had in that vision plan, which guides the redevelopment of large commercial properties, such as the Santa Rosa Mall site, into a mixed-use town center with a coordinated mix of commercial, residential, office, and civic uses. And so what it gives there and what's underlined, something that we talked with staff about and thought would be good to point out to you, is that it says it may allow higher residential densities and floor area ratios than base zoning as specified in the LDC with the development of an appropriate master plan which responds to community goals. So what that does is that allows staff and you all some flexibility to essentially give carrots along with the sticks or whatever you're maybe asking for from a developer. And those goals include pedestrian-friendly infrastructure, gathering spaces for public use, landscaping, buffering where the district abuts lower intensity uses. So essentially what this does is it leaves in all the typical commercial future land use, but then puts on this additional flexibility for you all to try to incentivize the creation of some of those community goals that you outlined in the vision plan. Does that make sense? All right. I guess I'm going to keep moving unless you'll stop me. So that's the location currently. I think there was some discussion about whether or not that may continue to the other side of the street. Yeah. Or
So obviously this is the mall area and then the out parcels as well. We can also expand this so across the street with the other red to expand the town center to include those commercial areas. But that's something, you can discuss and decide if you want to do that.
I like that idea.
This is for residential?
It's for commercial. So this is going to be our town center. So kind of Mary Esther's downtown, essentially. So mixed use, apartments, retail, entertainment.
Yeah, I like the incorporating the businesses on the other side of Mary Esther and on Page Bacon, just because it will kind of create a cohesive ownership,
Okay.
with the businesses. Because one business on this side fighting for one thing, and then they're off in their own little bubble. If they're in the same region or zone, then they're all together.
Okay.
all right. Moving on from that, then the next one, and this feeds into our earlier conversation, is the sound side overlay. We talked about this at length back in December, but the idea is to provide a little bit of flexibility for staff and for you all to deal with some of the particularities of these properties down there, including fences, location of accessory dwellings, to kind of stop you all from having to hear a bunch of variances about it, to kind of put in some administrative processes to say, hey, if these conditions exist, staff can go ahead and do that. If not, maybe there's a special use permit, and then only really using variances when you have to. And one of the things we put in here, is a little carrot and a little stick, is that we do have in here while preserving the historic nature of the area, including the mature tree canopy. And so we kind of have that, there's extra kind of ability to do some of those things that make sense on those properties, but also in recognizing that there is a tree canopy that's worth protecting down there. That, once again, doesn't do much by itself, but this is directing to staff, landowners, that this is kind of the direction that you're headed, and you would then adopt policy or specific ordinances that would do that.
So just to clarify, the properties on the sound side overlay are some properties south of 98. And some of these properties do have cottages, like the historic cottage district, but the difference is these cottages were built after 1975. So that's this distinction there. So it's similar to the historic duplex and cottage district, but these properties don't have duplexes, and the cottages that they do have are not historic. So,
About like a house.
and the houses.
When you say cottage, that includes a house?
So the distinction as well is for the HDCD, at least one dwelling unit, that could be the primary, the cottage, or the duplex, has to be historic. With the sound side, none of the dwelling units are considered historic. They've all been built. Or sorry, the primary could be historic, but the cottage or outbuildings are not historic. So that's just the distinction there. So, for example, this district has the oldest house built in Mary Esther in 1910. So that would be considered here, but it wouldn't be considered part of the HDCD because they don't have a cottage or duplex. That makes sense. Okay.
And here's just a little detail on that, kind of showing which properties are included. And you can see that it does overlay both your current low density residential as well as some of those proposed HDCD. Unless there's any questions, we are halfway through our time. I'm gonna get in trouble here. Still in land use. So this is what we were talking about. Here's some of the ways that you could introduce some flexibility into your land development code. The last thing that I wanted to talk about here was the potential for a community redevelopment area, whether or not we're going to include that in there. That was something we talked about before. You all are familiar with what they are, so I won't go
Yes.
through it. Obviously, currently subject to some legislative uncertainty. And so I didn't include any language about establishing one at this point, but we could.
No,
And we
yeah.
could do everything from staff may explore to staff shall, you can put it in as strong or as loose as you want. But it would be something that would be potentially helpful
Mhm.
in pursuing some of those goals that you outlined there. And so yeah, before I move on, I just kind of wanted to see what the feelings were if it makes sense to include a policy.
I would love to include the policy just to be proactive, thinking that it's
Yeah.
not going to be impacted. But with the knowledge that if we have to remove it, then we have to remove it. But
Yeah, it'll just be null
Is
and
it
void.
worth the effort to do that? What's the status of the CRA right now in Tallahassee? Is it
it's still being heard in the legislative floor.
Yeah, so it's looking good to pass.
To be to
Who
I don't think we can say that. I mean, to give another example, I think we thought the short-term rentals would pass the last 5 years and it hasn't. So it's
Hmm.
hard to tell.
There's a
It'd
little,
be
I think it
unfortunate
was
if it does.
a lot of support in the House and a little less in the Senate. So
Okay.
it could pass, but it's not like flying through either.
What's the timeline for that?
Well, I guess we got a month left, right?
A month.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we'll know. And so we could
Wait a month
Take
and
it
then
a
go
month.
from there, If it's a no, then you're wasting your time.
Yeah. And at this point, it was really just a policy kind of directing staff. Do you want to pursue this? The other thing that I put in there, and we could even kind of loosen up the language to make it more general, is that there are some alternatives to CRAs. Now, they're not necessarily all going to be, they're not all necessarily going to work. Some of them require the landowner to buy in, which you may or may not be able to get. But so we could put that you will explore CRAs and then these other kinds of things, kind of putting something in there general, directing staff to start to take those steps. So that's probably what I would lean towards, unless you have kind of a strong opinion to leave it out or to kind of focus on the CRA.
I would like to leave it in, but that's just
Yeah, I'd like to leave it in.
optimism.
Leave it
Yeah,
in.
you
Okay.
know,
A month,
I think
we'll let
it's
you know if it's worth leaving it in.
I'm going the wrong way. That's what's going on here. Made it through the first one, so we just got 9 more to go. I promise the rest are quick. Transportation elements, clarified, strengthened your references to non-motorized transportation. Specifically talked about alleviating queuing on US 98, working with the Okaloosa County School District. That was from the vision plan as well. We added some of these new transportation technology references in there, and then referenced bike and ped infrastructure in the new town center overlay. Skip that there. We talked about this before, trying to work with the school district about that,
Softball.
that alternative queuing.
Yeah.
This is just adding in, you know, some of the new technologies that have arisen since 91, like Larry Carter says, what was the outcome with the CRA? What was the outcome for us?
To keep it in.
Yeah, the idea is, yeah, we'll keep in a policy saying that staff should explore if it makes sense and is still legal. All right, thank you. So we added in EVs, traffic management center, things like that. We also, you know, as part of that town center, talked about focusing on bike ped infrastructure there, connectivity with existing transit, things like that. We can jump through. We're already done with transportation. Any questions on transportation? On to housing. Promotion of a wide variety of housing types, and we kind of talked about that a little bit with the historic HGCD. Missing middle housing, dedication to reviewing and improving the city's regulatory and permitting program. Kind of from your vision plan, we talked about that in December already. Some of the specific policy changes, creation of checklists for quicker development review of missing middle and infill. Changed the way that you talked about partnering with private and nonprofit housing developers to encourage adaptive reuse. A lot of other things. And there was also, we talked about, in the other elements, we created a couple of new residential districts in there. Oh, and also a direction to staff to explore accessory dwelling units, allowing those in the LDC. Any questions on housing? All right, infrastructure. We updated your goals surrounding wastewater disposal. Your current plan says that you want to expand your spray field on Hurlburt, and I don't think that's the case anymore. So we looked to just not necessarily saying what your future is going to hold there, but just that you're exploring disposal solutions to allow flexibility there. Clarified some of your solid waste management practices. A lot of things in here were just out of date, needed to be updated. Maybe I was talk about that later today. Your coastal management and conservation element, we updated the goals, reflected the new Resilient Florida state standards, updated references to the county's local mitigation strategy or regional hurricane evacuation study. And another thing that we talked about back in December as well is we added in Florida-friendly landscaping as a potential alternative to your current xeriscaping requirements. So kind of as a, help you recall, there's your evacuation zones along with your evacuation routes. And then your Florida-friendly landscaping standards is just something that, you know, currently you have the xeriscaping. It's a little bit, I think, out of date and a little kind of funny word. It's not bad, but this is more kind of with, there's a lot more resources for Florida-friendly landscaping. Extension produces them. It's also in state code, and so I think kind of modifying your code at some point to reflect that would make sense. To recreation and open space, creates a new category of a park. You had 3 park categories, and we created a new one, specifically a town center park that would be associated with the town center. And we could go, I don't know if we have the language for that in here, but also updated references to the upcoming bike ped trail plan for the Okaloosa-Walton TPO, added in references to your community gardens and farmers market, and modified references to tourism development organizations. As a reminder, there's your park locations. Here was your new town center park definition. So your town center park would be a public amenity associated with mixed-use development located in the town center overlay to improve the area's appeal. Facilities may include multi-purpose open areas, playground seating, and all that. And it's once again just direction to staff that as that development happens, and as they're looking for what sort of public amenities do we want to include here, this is one of them, and this is what we're looking for. Any questions on that? All right, we're rocketing through here. Intergovernmental coordination. We just clarified a lot of things here. A lot of organizations or planning processes that just don't exist anymore were in there that we had to take out, and we kind of put in the new ones just to refresh. Capital improvements, we added in a new updated inventory of your capital improvements, included the level of service standards. At one point that was also a standalone. We pulled it into here, and then establish a new annual goal setting process. So here's your new kind of capital improvements plan as it looks in there. Incorporated a lot of things that you guys are already doing, just wanted it reflected in your plans. And then annual goal setting meeting. This is one where there was previously a kind of a capital improvements planning committee that was in your comp plan. Doesn't seem like it ever met. No one seemed to be aware of it. And so we got rid of that. And everywhere that was referenced throughout your plan, we replaced it with a once a year, you'll have some sort of an annual public meeting, maybe an hour, something like this, where you'll kind of go back through the goals that you set for yourselves in the comp plan. Staff will kind of say, here's where we are. And then council has a chance to say, yeah, we're doing well here. You know, we're not doing so well over here. And here's our kind of 3 top priorities for the coming
So
year.
it's basically an update
Evaluation.
of what we're doing.
Yeah. And it's something that I think annual goal setting is great for all city councils. And then you can even kind of look back at your past year. Here's what we said our goals were. Here's what we did. And you can kind of see, all right, you know, here's where we're setting our goals a little bit too high, and here's where we're actually kind of moving forward. And so, yeah, so this is just kind of and then it gives you a chance to update your comp plan if something has come up in that year.
Okay.
And the idea is this will probably happen along with your capital improvements.
So what
planning
you're saying is
process.
we should not wait 30 years to update a comp plan?
I mean, you know, not best practice, but
25.
you're the elected officials, so you just do what you want.
You weren't here 30 years ago.
I mean, I was just born. Come on.
Public schools, you have an interlocal agreement with the school system, so a lot of this really just reflects what's already in there. Added that reference to the new access for Mary Esther Elementary, clarified support for safe routes to schools, removed references to outdated materials there. The one thing I did want to point out is when we did your population projections, it does show, let's see if I can highlight here, that 0 to 19, that is going to be kind of one of the more significant population kind of growth areas, that you're going to see more younger people according to the state's current populations. And so,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh, the old ones are dying off.
there you go. It's freeing up housing.
We need to get a bigger cemetery.
Well,
do
a lot
need
of
a
the older
bigger
ones too, you
cemetery.
see over there. But they're, you know, there's a lot of stuff in there about coordinating around new schools. Yeah, I don't think that's really been a concern for a long time, but, you know, maybe. So it's still in there.
I don't think
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I'm going the wrong way again. I keep getting confused. All right, and we're on to the last one already. I told you it'd go a lot faster. The last one is your property rights element. This is one of the things that kind of forced this update. It's required in state law. You just have to add kind of some state recommended language to protect property owners' rights. We also took advantage of this to clarify some of your current notice and hearing procedures, where your current procedures were a little different than kind of what you had in code. So we clarified that here, and that's direction to staff to kind of modify the code to reflect kind of what your practices are. Once again, this was brought in by the state to kind of balance interests, where you've got individuals have the rights to their property, but you also have to balance that with promoting broader community goals as well. So I just dropped the whole thing in there, the whole first goal. This one's by far the shortest of your elements. But yeah, you're going to respect, judicially acknowledge, and constitutionally protected property rights during your local decision-making processes. All that's pretty standard. And then the next one, I didn't include everything, but like your current code actually says that the property owner is the one who mails, and then just proves to the city that they mailed them. But in practice, you actually mailed them for the property owners. So we just kind of clarified some of that. And then the other thing that we talked about was the city shall regularly evaluate the most efficient methods of providing notice, so that staff may look if there are ways that are less costly and better at getting the notice out to the public.
This is more than
beyond
just
newspapers.
a variance, right? This is more like a major product where you just go out and within 300 feet, you call people, or is it just a variance? You know, like I want to, you know, put my building here. Is that also, this applies?
Yeah, it's for both, because we require that currently for variances or for any major development as
Okay,
well.
So it's
So-
already there.
Right. I think we're just highlighting the fact that the city in practice mails them out whereas before in our comp plan currently, it says that the applicants should be milling them out. So,
Mayor, the mic.
Okay,
Carter can't hear you.
I apologize. Larry, I'll talk louder.
So that's it for the kind of major updates. Anything that we've got a whole 15 minutes. We should fill it, right? Anything that you wanted to make sure that we talked about or get clarification on before we talk through next steps? All right. So the next things we got to do is final revisions. I think I'm going to go back to that CRA, and I'll also go back to the historic. Anything else that you all heard that you wanted me to reconsider before we finalize these?
Good. I really appreciate all of the effort that you and our staff has put into this. It's
Much needed.
very much needed. Yeah. So thank you very much.
And this will be good till
Tyler,
20,
that's to you too.
45?
45. Yeah.
Okay.
And all your
great.
problems will be solved.
I think the other one, Eric, too, was just the potential expansion of the town center overlay
Yes.
to
Yeah.
east of Mary Esther Boulevard.
So we'll make those changes and kind of go back through it one more time with the red pen, and then kind of we'll start working on the submittal documents for the state, where they need a cross through and underline version and all that, as well as the data inventory and analysis that goes along with all
What's
these.
the timeline for that? Roughly.
I think we could be done with it I'm gone the rest of this week, but otherwise like 3 weeks.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Well,
it's
And
pretty
by
much
that
done.
time frame, we
Yeah.
may know more about the CRA.
Yeah.
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 Months go by, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good.
And then kind of what you'll do is you'll go through the local planning agency is going to have a hearing, recommend to council. You'll have that first transmittal hearing, and then you'll send it off to the state for review. You'll send it off to the regional governments. You'll send it off to us, and then there will be a time frame for review, and then you'll have a second reading and adoption hearing. There'll be a final submittal, and then people can appeal it. But that's kind of the next steps here. I'll kind of take direction from you all and staff as to timing and getting the notices out there. But yeah, I would say within the next, say 3 weeks, we could have it ready to go. But if you want to wait a month to see for sure what the fate of the CRA legislation is, that
You'll
not be
know a
a bad
lot more,
idea.
like
Yeah.
April
Yeah.
said, in
Yeah.
3 weeks,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, if it's still alive in 3 weeks, it's probably gonna
Yeah.
have a better chance of staying alive. So
Sure.
yeah.
All right.
But there's no harm to have it in there, even if it's
Yeah.
an illegal event.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
and there was a lot of stuff in there before that referenced codes that don't exist anymore, and they're there, but it doesn't really harm you.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Well, thanks so
thank
much for the opportunity.
No, I'm sorry, that discussion now.
The only thing I was going to say, Mayor, was it could always change too. They could adopt it this year, and next year they could rescind it. They've already started talking about rescinding a number of pieces of legislation that were adopted in the last 5
But it
years.
wouldn't hurt to have it in there.
The one question I had going through, Tyler sent all the information in reference to H. It talks about the budgets, inventory of capital improvements.
Yeah.
Okay. My concern there was, it shows, I'll use the Cristobal Waterfront Park, that $3 million+ in the year 2024/2025. But then the following 25, 26, 26, 27, 28, 27, or yeah, 27, 28, 28, and 29, it's always a zero. Is this just for the initial, or is this supposed to be, my concern is this an upkeep thing that we should, I'm trying to make sure that our finance director, oh, wait a minute, I need to throw an extra, and I'll pick a number, $10,000 in the year 2028 that we might have to repaint something or put a new bench in or whatever or is this just the initial price?
So what I put in here was what had been adopted. I don't know if you guys want to speak to what was in there, but the capital improvements plan, you're not necessarily, it's just kind of to help you look ahead. You're not, tied into anything here, but like it's exactly so you can see things like what you just mentioned. It's so you can see on paper, oh, wait a second, we might need more. And so if you're planning your budget.
Yeah, my concern is when the next storm comes
Yeah.
and it wipes out the dock, that's also handicapped and everything else. Oh, wait a minute. We now have to spend $150,000-$200,000. We didn't budget for this. Oops. That's my only concern is looking at, and that's just one, and there's all these
Yeah.
are like this. Yeah, again, if it's just the initial fee, that's fine, but we and Heather, finance, yeah, we need to make sure, as we all do, you're gonna retire someday. You better have enough money, enough eggs around that if this one falls out, we still can do this. That's all I was looking.
And I would say your capital improvement plan, you rarely do what you think you're going to do 3 years out, right? It's just sort of, but it's better to have an idea to try to plan for it. And yeah.
Okay? Thank you. All right, and this is our group discussions, right? All right, any more discussion? Okay, you want to do closing remarks? One of you two.
I'll let you do it.
It's on my list here, closing remarks.
Well, thank you for your feedback. We're going to take everything that you discussed tonight and we'll include it for our next round. And then we'll present for adoption here in the next couple months. So.
Okay,
Thank
thank you.
Thank you
The
again.
the other one I would add in, I've been attending the Monday morning call-ins, 8:30 every morning. The state is also looking at, and I'm going to misquote it, it's accessible property behind a property that you can put like a maid's quarters or whatever in. So again, some of this may get changed that we're going to hear from Tallahassee. Oh, by the way, but again, that's right. If we have it here, we can adjust it. If we don't have it, yeah, I'd rather, okay, here's our plan. If you're going to adjust it, that's fine. Short-term rentals, that's still out there. Okay, but at least we have a plan. And the other thing is, in 10 or 20 years, probably most of us won't be here, but at least they'll have a guide. This is where we think, well, all right, Susie, you may still be here. But well, at least they have a guide of, this is where we want to go. This is what they envisioned. And so, which is a good plan, I think. That's all I have. Thank you.
Other comments other than that 10 and 20-year thing? That was pretty rude in my book, you know? I go for 10 years at least, come on. Okay, anything else?
I'm good, sir. Thank you.
Everybody pretty much good?
Did we take, anybody out there have anything?
Anybody in the public wish to speak or out there about our comp plan? Oh, Mr. Carter, you got any words of wisdom?
Nope. Nope.
Not sure about words of wisdom, but I'd like to piggyback briefly on Councilman Sutton's when she brought up the subject of historic. And I think that may be something to really think about in the future. That may be a tipping point for people investing in our city, or must, it's something that makes us very appealing. I think she really, I think what she said really hit a chord with me. I think something that requires further evaluation and discussion, that we develop those properties. It could be our signature, why they want to come here. And I'm not saying, short-term rentals or anything like that, because it's really too premature for that. But that is something that's very unique. It's on the bay, it's on the water. I mean, you have the best of both worlds, be able to live there and have that type of a thing for our city. So I think it's something to really look at. At some point in time, I think we should ask the staff to look at the zoning, makes it appealing, and where it's a win-win for the owner, win-win for the city, and it's a chance to increase our tax base. I see us doing something with that would make everybody a winner, and something we would have that Desta doesn't have, Crestview doesn't have. Not that we're competing with them, but I think that's something that would be a signature location, just like our Shady Grove is coming through the city by Target. I think there's something that really we could gold mine on that. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you. We got 7 minutes. Wow.